Human experimentation is a conduction of a medical experiment on humans. Silent features types therapeutic experimentation. When subject is ill and his condition is likely to improve with experimentation, combination of medical research with medical care. Research experimentation when subject is healthy and experimentation is done purely to broaden scientific knowledge. Medicines and procedures are well accepted. Innovative experimentation. Experiments use medicines and procedures that have not yet earned a place in medical practice. Experimental misadvantage is occurrence of a serious accident during human experimentation. It is the one of the types of medical misadvantage. Historical Herophilus of Chalcedon, a great Greek physician, used it to vivisect prisoners received from Turkey. Nuremberg Code. During World War II, the Nazis conducted a number of experimentations which were cruel in nature. This included forcing subjects to stand in a tank of ice water for up to 3 hours to study the effect of hypothermia, and producing wounds in prisoners and infecting them with bacteria such as streptococcus, clostridia using gas, gangrene, and tetanus. So the effect of sulfonamide could be studied. Most current knowledge on the pathology of starvation comes from those experiment. After World War II was over, the Nazis doctors were tried and prosecuted for having conducted research on humans without their consent. These trials were held in Nuremberg, Germany, called Nuremberg trial. A formal code was developed by the US judge in 1947, Nuremberg Code, which outlined the basic principles to be followed if human experiment was to be carried out in future. Voluntary consent of the human subject is absolutely essential. The experiment would be such as to yield fruitful results for the good of society, unprocurable by other method. Anticipated result should justify the performance of the experiment. The experiment should avoid all unnecessary physical and mental suffering and injury. No experiment should be conducted even with the consent when there is possibility of death or a disabling injury. The only possible exception is where the experimental physician also serves as a subject. The degree of risk should never exceed the benefit expected for the society. Adequate facility must be provided to protect the subject against possibilities of injury, disability, or death. The experiment should be conducted only by scientifically qualified person. During the course of the experiment, the human subject should be at liberty to bring the experiment at an end if he has reached the physical or mental state where continuation of the experiment seems to him too impossible. During any stage of the experiment, the scientist must terminate if its continuation is likely to result in injury, disability, or death of the experimental subject. Next is first. So this is Nuremberg Code. Next is a Declaration of HELSINKI, 1964, adopted by the 18th WMA General Assembly held at Helsinki, Finland in June 1964, amended in 1975, 83, 89, 96, 2000, 2002, 2004. The prescribes ethical principle for human experimentation mnemonic Helsinki, human experimentation divided into 3 parts as below. Introduction. Aimed at a declaration is primarily addressed primarily to physician, but WMA, World Medical Association, encourages other participants in medical research involving human subject to adopt this principle. Underrepresented population in medical research should be provided in appropriate access to participation in research. Principle for all medical research. Informed consent of subjects or their legally authorized representative in writing. Patient's refusal must never interfere with the patient-physician relationship. Privacy and confidentiality must be maintained. Duty of physician. World Medical Association recognize that medical progress must ultimately include studies involving human subject. However, it stresses duties of physicians towards a research subject. These are to protect the life, health, dignity, integrity, right to self-discrimination, privacy, and confidentiality of personal information of research subject. There will be must take a precedence over all other interest. Experiments must be based on adequate laboratory and through animal experimentation. The welfare of animals used for research must be respected. Environment may not be harmed. Registration. Every clinical trial must be registered in a publicly accessible database before the recruitment of the first subject. Research protocol. There should be a research protocol should have following information: a statement of the ethical consideration, how the principle in this declaration have been addressed, information regarding funding, sponsors, institutional affiliation, other potential conflict of interest, incentives for subject, provision for treating and compensating subject who are harmed as a consequence of participation in the research study, arrangement for post-study access by study subject to intervention is identified as beneficial in the study, access to other appropriate care or benefit, research ethics committee. The research protocol must be submitted for consideration, comment, guidance, and approval to a research ethics committee before the study begins. This committee must be an independent of the researcher, the sponsor, and any other undue influencer. It must be taken into consideration the laws and regulations of the country in which the research to be performed. International norms and standards must always be followed. The committee must monitor ongoing studies. The researcher must provide monitoring information to the committee, especially information about any serious adverse effect. No change to the protocol may be made without consideration and approval by the committee. Research must be conducted only by individuals with the appropriate scientific training and qualification. Vulnerable and disadvantaged population. Medical research may involve those who cannot give or refuse consent for themselves, those who have those who may be vulnerable to coercion or undue influence. The highest ethical standard must be maintained when involving them in research. The research on this population is only justified if it is responsive to their health need and priorities, and if there is a reasonable likelihood that this population or community stands to benefit from the result of the research. Risk benefit ratio. Research must be proceeded by careful assessment of predictable risk in comparison with the foreseeable benefit. Importance of the objectives must outweigh the inherent risk and burdens to the research subject. Study must be immediately stopped when the risks are found to outweigh the potential benefit or when there is conclusive proof of profit or beneficial result. Publication of results, ethical reporting. Completeness and accuracy of report. Negative or inconclusive as well as positive results should be published. Sources of funding, institution affiliation, conflict of interest should be declared in the publication. Editors should not be accepted for a publication report of research not in accordance with the principle of this declaration. Therapeutic experimentation. The use of placebo or no treatment is acceptable in studies when there is no current proven intervention exists. Information. The physician must fully inform the patient which aspects of care are related to the research. They must be informed about the outcome of the study and to share benefit that result from when unproven intervention are justified. When where proven intervention do not exist or have been ineffective in the physician judgment, it must offer hope of saving life, re-establishing health, or alleviating suffering. Thank you.